College is certainly an investment, but is it worth it? Maybe not, according to new research from Goldman Sachs. The company said in a research note published in early December that the average return on college is falling. In 2010, students could expect to break even within 8 years of finishing school. Since then, that has increased to 9 years, and if this trend continues, students who went to college will know it will be 10 years. I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. It's just like USA Today's writing is, oh, woohoo, we went from 8 to 9. If this trend continues, I had to edit. I'm sorry. Students who start college in 2030 without scholarships or grants, it said, may not see a return on investment until age 37. Recent graduates can relate to the report. Mary Kate Bauman, a 2010 graduate of a private college in upstate New York, who also graduated from journalism and business graduate programs at the University of Missouri this year, said, my undergraduate education was $200,000 in total. My first job paid only $28,000. That's a large disparity. You think. Goldman Sachs calculated the economic return on college education as the total all-in cost of college, net grants and scholarships, and the wages forgone during the 4 years of the study versus a high school graduate over their working life. Of course, many students say college is money well spent. I think it's worth it to grow as a person, and there are so many other experiences that college teaches you, said Vanderbilt University senior Chris Wolk, who plans to go into the consulting field after he paid $56,000 a year for tuition at Vanderbilt. It's just so funny, you guys. I'm sorry. People that are ignorant about education is just the oxymoronic part of that makes me to get tickled. I can't resist. All right, let's hit the education topic one more time, since USA Today has helped us with this, and Goldman Sachs is calculating the return on investment. At least somebody's thinking that there ought to be an ROI. That's a good thought. There ought to be an ROI. There ought to be an ROI. Here's the thing. There's a rule in statistics, and often when a liberal is arguing with me, they bring the rule up, and it's a valid rule called causation or correlation does not necessarily imply causation. So because college students' incomes are higher, we correlate that with the fact that they went to, or college graduates' incomes are higher. We correlate that and say that the income was caused by the fact that they went to college. And the rule in stats is you can't necessarily say the cause of their higher income is their college education. Well, what would it be then? Well, it could be that the very things that cause them in their character to go to college in the first place and complete college, the ability to complete something, the ability to drive through the lane and put the ball in the hoop, called grit. Maybe grit is what caused their higher income, not college. But maybe grit leads you to college because you want to be smarter. So maybe it's not necessarily causation and correlation situation. It really... listen, I'm all about education. All three of my kids went to school. I told them we were going to have them shot if they didn't. So they all four got 4-year degrees, okay? I mean, we believe in education around the Ramseys. Being dumb is really not a good idea. I mean, learning stuff is a smart thing. But we have completely taken this college thing and blown it up and in this country and in this culture, and we've lost our ever-loving minds. I mean, this chick who goes and gets $200,000 for her undergraduate and... goes and gets a $28,000 job. I mean, somewhere along the line, you never got a clue, kiddo. I mean, what were you studying? I mean, you got a degree in business and in journalism, and your first job's making $28K. You know, logistics majors are coming out now. Supply chain people are coming out now making 50 to 60 with an undergrad only. So maybe if you're going to study something, you ought to stop and freaking think about what it's going to pay when you get out of school. There should be a correlation to what you're studying. That would keep you from getting a degree in miscellaneous stupid stuff. Got a PhD in German polka history, and then I can't figure out why I can't get a job. Because there are no jobs for doctorates in German polka history. That's just ridiculous. But the society owes me a dadgum living because I'm highly educated and I'm a twit. And, that's just ridiculous, people. See, what we have here is really not an education problem, really not a cost of college problem. What we have here is a parenting problem. Some of you people are raising twits. And then you turn them loose on the culture and act like college ruined them. No, they were ruined long before they got to college. College just exposed that they were twits. And the fact that you go $300,000 in debt to get a degree in women's studies and then can't figure out. You're young, if you're not a liberal, you don't have a heart. And when you're old, if you're not a conservative, you don't have a brain. The Washington Post has an article out today, or this weekend, that indicates similar things. Millennials like socialism is the title of the article, until they get jobs. Millennials are the only age group in America in which a majority views socialism favorably. A National Reason Group survey found that 53% of Americans under age 30 have a favorable view of socialism, compared with less than a third of those over 30. Moreover, Gallup has found that an astounding 69% of millennials say they'd be willing to vote for a socialist candidate for president. Among their parents' generation, only one-third would do so. Indeed, national polls and exit polls reveal about 70 to 80% of young Democrats are casting their ballots for presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, who calls himself a democratic socialist. Yet millennials tend to reject the actual definition of socialism: government ownership of the means of production or government running businesses. Only 32% of millennials favor an economy managed by the government. So are they socialists or aren't they? They're just lacking in knowledge of the basic definitions. That's interesting. And as millennials age and begin to earn more, their socialistic ideals seem to slip away, according to the data. Coming of age during the Great Recession, millennials aren't sure if free markets are sufficient to drive income mobility, and thus many are comfortable with government helping to provide for people's needs. A recent study found that 69% of millennials favor a government guarantee for health insurance, and 54% support a guarantee for a college education. So will that last? Are millennials ushering in a sea change of public opinion? Do they signal the transformation of the United States into a Scandinavian social democracy? Well, it depends. There is some evidence that this generation's views on activist government will stick. However, there is more reason to expect that for the Scandinavian version of socialism may wither as they age and make money and pay more in taxes. The expanded social welfare state Sanders thinks the United States should adopt requires everyday people to pay considerably more in taxes. Yet millennials become averse to social welfare spending if they foot the bill. As they reach the threshold of earning $40,000 to $60,000 a year, the majority of millennials come to oppose income redistribution, including raising taxes to increase financial assistance to the poor. Similarly, the research poll found that while millennials still on their parents' health insurance policy supported the idea of paying higher premiums to help cover the uninsured, 57% support flipped, or 57% supported higher premiums while they were on their parents' policies. Support flipped among millennials paying for their own health insurance, with 59% opposed to higher premiums. When tax rates are not explicit, millennials say they'd prefer larger government offering more services. That's 54% of them said that, to smaller government offering fewer services, 43%. However, when larger government offering more services is described as requiring higher taxes, support flips. And 57% of millennials opt for smaller government with fewer services and lower taxes. Sounds like a conservative or something. While only 41% at that point prefer large government. See, I'm 55 years old, and I am a huge fan of the millennial generation. And so that makes me a little bit unusual among my age group that reads articles like this and where they're feeling the burn and all that stuff. I've got a whole bunch of millennials working for me on our team, and I hear employers when I'm doing leadership training all over the United States say, millennials are really tough to hire, they're really tough to hire, they're really tough to get good ones, they're really tough to get good ones. Listen, it's really tough to get good people. I don't care what generation they are. It's tough to get people who are ambitious, who care, who are talented, who are passionate, who actually work while they're at work and don't steal. That's just tough of any generation. It's not a racial thing. It's not a male-female thing. It's not an age group thing. It's tough to get good people on your team. I got 560 of them in here, and they're good people. And if one of them isn't, they'll be gone soon. It's a tough thing to run a business and get good people. And we love millennials here because there's only two types, awesome and sucks. And they tell you, they're real honest. I suck. I believe in the burn. And I want you to give me free stuff, and I'm going to sit on my butt because I was born on third base and I think I hit a triple. They'll tell you that. Or they come in here and go, and you're changing the world, Dave, and I want to be part of something that's changing the world. You're saving marriages, and people are getting out of debt and changing family trees, and I'm a crusader, and, man, I want to be on board on something like that. And they plug in here, and they'll outwork a baby boomer 3-1 because they care so deeply. They're crusaders. I love them. I think millennials are awesome. But what this article is pointing out is when you have to pay the bill to go with your philosophies, when you have to write a check and put your dadgum money where your mouth is, it suddenly puts your philosophies to the test. It changes your philosophies from something that's real when you have to look at your children and make decisions about your children because what you're sending to Washington goes up, called taxes. That's different than sitting around a campfire smoking weed and discussing philosophy. It's different. Everybody's a dadgum philosopher when they don't have to write the checks. Everybody's an economist until they start writing the checks. Let me give you an example. I'm 55, as I said. So the kids that were my babysitters, the girls in the neighborhood that were 6 years older than me, which would put them in their 60s now, that was the hippie generation. That was the long hair, burning flags, protesting the Vietnam War. They were a bunch of communists, not socialists. They believed in communes were popping up. Let me just tell you, it's very difficult to find anyone that is much more of a capitalist than an old hippie. You meet an old hippie in their 60s, they're a Deadhead, they're a Grateful Dead fan. You meet an old hippie in their 60s, they are flaming capitalists. They figured out through the scope of their life that communism is a failed event. It's a failed system. And they adopted the best system on earth, which is capitalism. Same thing will happen to the misguided millennials once they start writing the checks. And that's what this data shows. So there's great hope for this nation. Don't be disappointed in this younger generation. They're following their heart rather than their brain. It'll come to them. They're good people. We're gonna be all right, America. Bernie's not gonna get elected. Don't you worry. This is the Dave Ramsey Show. Switzerland votes no to a guaranteed monthly income. Proposals which would force the Swiss government to pay each of its citizens the equivalent of nearly $1,800, about $2,200 a month, whether or not they are working, have been rejected. The introduction of a, quote, unconditional national income, unquote, had been proposed as a means of tackling poverty and inequality, but it was derided as a, quote, Marxist dream by critics, which it is. The final result showed about 77% of Swiss voters opposed the plan in a national referendum, which is like a slam dunk. The government had urged citizens to vote no after 100,000 signatures supporting the move had forced a referendum. Advocates argued that because robots, machines, and computers are increasingly replacing humans in the workplace and don't need to be paid a salary, workers could be freed from the drudgery of employment if the state stepped in to support them. Here's the problem. Marxists, socialists, and communists forget that the government doesn't have any money anywhere except money it took from someone who is producing money. Government creates no money. The only way the government has money is if it took it from one of us. And so the only way that it would have money to give these people is if it took more from the other people. Thus, Marxism, communism. One of the best vacations I've ever had in my life was about 18 months ago. Sharon and I spent 10 days in Switzerland. an absolutely fabulous country. Absolutely fabulous. Very industrious people, just brilliant and kind. There's, the French side, the German side, and it is the influence of the culture and so forth. It's just an amazing country. We absolutely enjoyed it. And I will go back. It is probably one of the most enjoyable European countries I've ever visited, actually. It is just, again, it's a little expensive. I will say that. I mean, like eating dinner in Geneva, cha-ching, right? It's like eating dinner in London or in New York City. I mean, it's pretty pricey, but it was fabulous. We had an absolutely stellar time, just the two of us. And, it really enjoyed the country, enjoyed the people, enjoyed everything. And I'm really glad to see them vote this down. But, it's always interesting. These socialists always point out, and the ones running for office in the U.S. and all that, they always point out these little tiny European countries, which, you think of Switzerland, it's, quote, a legitimate country. It is a legitimate country. And they just voted down Marxism and communism. Congratulations. Way to go, guys. And here's the thing. 8.1 million people. How many people live in Dallas? 8 million people in the Dallas Metroplex. Switzerland is the size of Dallas. Does that give you a little perspective? I'm not talking about geographically or culturally or age or heritage. I'm talking about the number of human beings. And by the way, the economic production is very similar. The gross domestic product of Switzerland is pretty close to the gross domestic product of Dallas. And so this is like Dallas making a decision, which this wouldn't even have made the referendum because Texas is still part of America, right? But parts of America are confused and think they're not part of America anymore. But, I mean, people that live in Dallas, they're capitalists, I'll just tell you. Texans, yay Texas. We love Texans. Tennesseans and Texans have always gotten along, for a lot of reasons. But, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And for those of you, well, what about Norway? Norway, I mean, Atlanta is bigger than Norway. Shut up. I mean, you guys discuss these things like they're some kind of big kind of proof of this socialism crap. We're touring Sweden and enjoyed it. Again, very nice people. The economy is nowhere near as robust as Switzerland. But, we're going through there, our little tour guides going, we have free college education. We have free this and free that and free this. And finally, I had a American belly full of her free. And I'm like, so what is your personal income tax rate? 65%. I missed where you got free out of that, chick. There's no free there. Well, I don't pay that much in taxes. Yeah, but there's no free. There is no free health care. There is no free college education. There is no free retirement plan. Quit saying crap is free that comes from the government. It makes you look stupid because it's not free. And if the idiots that put this thing on the Swiss ballot had gotten their way, an unconditional national income would have been free. Not. Because somebody has to pay for this crap. Somebody needs to remind you, people, the government does not pay for anything. It takes money from other people to pay for things. There is no free. I saw a doofus from the Democrats the other day go, this is going to destroy the lockbox on the Social Security system. I'm like, dude, there's been no money in the lockbox on the Social Security system in decades. It was destroyed long ago. Social Security system is completely cash flowed out of Congress. Any money that was in there was stolen long ago and spent. You know how Social Security gets paid? They collect more than they put out. There's no lockbox. There is no money set aside in the Social Security system. It's not even set aside at all. They just completely take it and spend it however they want. They just happen to spend and take in enough to be able to pay the Social Security bill. Social Security is not free. Subsidized housing is not free. Health care is not free. Free is it has no cost. God, man, we have failed our children in basic economic education to where they walk around going, I want free college education. It might be free to you, doofus, but the rest of us are going to be paying for it. And some of us are not confused about that. We know where the money came from, out of our back pocket. So the next time somebody wants to make the argument that a European country is somehow, a socialist European country is somehow stellar, remind them that it's probably not the size of Dallas. In this case, we are highlighting a European country that is stellar and did do a great job, called Switzerland. Way to go, Swiss. The right-wing Swiss People's Party argued that the country's open border agreement with the EU would lead to people pouring into the country and take advantage of the scheme. Do you think? Yeah. Under the European Union, in other words, you can come and go at will. A lot of people don't live in Switzerland, work in Switzerland, drive in every day. Today, we saw the traffic jams when we were there. Actually sat in one at one point. And those are people that don't work in the country, that are working, or they don't live in the country, that are working in the country. They choose to live in France and drive across the line, and which is part of the European Union deal. But guess what? If you had a free income, an unconditional national income, does that not make you want to just blow your, man, golly, that's unbelievable. Yeah, and this is the kind of crap that's coming around here because we've taught people, or didn't teach people, how basic economics works, that there is nothing from the government that is free. Those roads you drive on, they weren't free. Somebody paid for them with property taxes or income taxes. They weren't free. There is no free. Stop telling people stuff is free from the government. It makes you look stupid because you are. It's not free. It can't be free if it came from the government. It came from someone else. They took money from someone else and gave it to your program, and it might be free to you, but it's not free. We don't have a free anything. We, the people, pay for crap through the government. And oh, by the way, it takes about $2 to get 70 cents worth through the government black hole, actually back out into the marketplace. It's a fairly inefficient, extremely inefficient method of wealth transfer for you inequality dupes that are out there. So quit trying to talk that through. It doesn't even work mathematically. It's not free, this. So since I was up on the break, let me reiterate this. You have great, incredible value as a human. That has nothing to do with what you get paid. What you get paid is the service you render to the marketplace. If you organize the antiperspirant aisle in a Walmart, that's what you get paid for. If you're the CEO of Walmart and therefore you organize all the aisles in all the thousands and thousands and thousands of stores around the world that employ thousands and thousands and thousands of people, you bring more economic value to the marketplace and you get paid more. That does not mean that the CEO of Walmart or the CEO of my company, me, or the CEO of whatever is worth more as a human being, but it does mean they brought more economic value to the market. Your pay is not based on your worth as a human being, nor should it be. You have great value as a human being. But your pay is based on the economic value you bring to the market. Well, I'm too smart and have too many degrees to make this much money. Prove it by bringing economic value to the marketplace. Do something that helps someone. Do something that serves someone. Do something that makes someone's life better in some way, and you will make more money. Do it a lot and on a lot of scale, and you'll make even more money. That's how economic value works. See, that's the same thing of, they say, well, such and such an NFL quarterback makes $90 million in his last contract. Nobody's worth that kind of money. You ever heard anybody say that? No one should ever be paid that kind of money. See, that's someone, when you say that crap, that shows your ignorance. You thought that someone was being paid based on their value as a human being. No. They're not more valuable as a human being than you are. You're just as valuable as a human being as they are. But they brought more economic value to the marketplace than you did. Because believe me, the NFL team could not pay them $90 million. Were they not making more than $90 million as a result of that guy throwing that football down the field successfully? It's an economic thing. And so if you have a restaurant and you do a really good job, you make that amount of money for the service you brought to the economy. It does not mean that you are a more valuable or less valuable human being. And I've met puffed up, self-important rich people who think that they're more valuable as a human being because they're rich, and that's just not true. You're not. You're just a person. You just happen to have more green pieces of paper than the other guy. Zippy. It doesn't make you more important. And I've met people in positions of power in politics who somehow thought they were more important and that someone should care for them. But the ones that we all love, the ones we love to meet, the quote important or wealthy or famous or whatever they are the ones that realize that as a human being, I have exactly the same value you do, no more, no less. I might have brought more or less economic value to the marketplace than you brought, but those are two separate discussions. But see, in a culture where everybody gets a trophy, sometimes people stop and think, gosh, it means I as a human being am not valuable if I don't get paid the same as someone else. And, you know, you deserve to be paid a living wage. Why? Because everyone deserves that. Why? They're entitled to that. Why? Why? If you don't do anything to bring economic value to the marketplace, how have you earned a living wage? You haven't. See, here's the way you ought to look at the minimum wage. What's the minimum you're willing to bring to the marketplace? How big a fire are you going to build? How big a ruckus are you going to cause? How much service are you going to provide? What's your minimum level of service that you want to bring to the market? Do you think a waitress that works 5 days a week ought to make 5 times as much as someone who works 1 day a week? If she waits 5 times more tables than he does, shouldn't she be paid 5 times more? Yes, but he deserves a living wage. Why? He didn't work as much. If you want a living wage, try making a living. That's why they call it that. Making a living. It's called going into the marketplace and finding a way to serve. I figured out that some companies are not willing to pay me enough for my time that I can bring more service and economic value to the market doing other things than some companies are willing to pay. When I was a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old, back in those days, you could actually work at Burger King, and you could be a Whopper flopper. And I forget, but it seems like in my mind, it seems like minimum wage was $1.65 an hour. I think that's right. I'll have to go look it up to be sure. If I'm wrong, you can destroy me on Twitter as being an idiot, and all you people will. That's fine. But I think it was $1.65 an hour. Whatever. I figured out that I could mow grass and make 2 to 3 times more per hour what my buddies were making flopping Whoppers. And so I determined I did not want to be a Whopper flopper. I wanted to be a grass cutter. By the way, the grass cutting is outside, and I have hay fever. So I sneezed, and I was filthy. And I'm in Tennessee where the humidity is so thick in August you can cut it with a knife. And so I sweat like an animal. At 13 years old, I think they call that child abuse. Covered in dirt from the weed eater and the lawnmower blowing back on you in the wind and the humidity so thick and the sweat, and so it all sticks to you at the end of the day. I remember that like it was yesterday. It feels like 20 years ago. It was actually 40 years ago. But it feels like in my emotions it was yesterday. I remember every bit of that. But I also remember timing myself on how quickly I could cut the grass, and my goal was to cut the grass fast enough and still do a good enough job that I could make at least twice what my buddies were making per hour. And so I could work half as much and make the same money, or work the same amount and make twice as much money, because I provided a different level of economic value. I earned more than they earned. Nobody used to strike against Burger King and McDonald's in those days. We just didn't work for them if we didn't like what they paid. And so if you don't like what someone pays, you're really saying you are unwilling to provide more service to the marketplace. You need to bring more economic value to the marketplace. I had a young man working here one time who had more degrees than a thermometer, and he came into my office and he said, people that have this many degrees that work in other places make a lot more than I do. And I said, well, you can here too. We can pay you a whole lot more. But here's the way it works here. Your raise is effective when you are. When you bring this organization more value, you can get paid more. Currently, all we do is shovel all the crap from around you because you're constantly spewing it. And so try doing something of value that brings in more money than you cost, and I'll share some of it with you. They didn't teach him that at one of the schools he went to when he was getting one of his master's degrees. If you want more money, bring more economic value to the market. Regardless of whether you do that or not, though, you're very valuable as a human being. But do not confuse your inherent intrinsic value as a human being with your economic value. Your economic value is based on one thing and one thing only: the value that you bring to the market. It's not based on your ability to be pissed off at somebody else because they don't pay you enough. That's your fault. How's that for a weird idea? Separating the value of a human being from their economic value. Just a second ago, during the commercial break, and a guy was asking me a question about tipping. And it just made me think about, I haven't reminded you guys in a while. There's a rule if you listen to this show. If you didn't know the rule, I'll tell you what it is. If the pizza guy, when he comes to your door, or pizza gal comes to your door to deliver a pizza, you ask them how they're doing, and they say better than I deserve, that's code for they listen to this show, they're working that extra job to get out of debt. And so you are required to give them an extra large tip. When you're parking your car, if the valet parking your car, if you ask them how you're doing, and they say better than I deserve, you have to give them an extra large tip because they're out there in the heat or the cold or the rain parking your car for you, and they're doing that to get out of debt. That's code for, I listened to the Dave Ramsey show, I'm in Financial Peace University, I've read the Total Money Makeover book, and I'm getting out of debt. I'm out here working my butt off. That's what that's code for. And so we all got to band together, people. We have to stick together. And some of you that are doing a little better and you're out there running around doing stuff like that, and you're ordering a pizza or you're parking your car, that means that you're in a position to give a nice tip. Which, by the way, let me just help you with this. Some of you need to understand that tipping doesn't say as much about the server as it says about you. You ever carry one of those trays? All right, shut up then. They're heavy. And, well, they shouldn't take that job. No, listen, if you go in there and you can't afford to leave a tip, you don't need to go out to eat. Cheapskate. And Christians are the worst. Servers don't want to work on Sunday because cheapskate Christians go out to eat and don't leave a tip. What kind of witness is that? I mean, leave a track. You ought to be smacked. Somebody ought to just, your mother should smack you. Leave a track about Jesus loves you and here's how you meet God instead of leaving a tip. Well, that's more important than a tip. Yeah, it's more important than a tip, but you have no credibility because you're a cheapskate. You lost your relationship with your server in the process. Doofus. Unbelievable. So here's a rule. Leave a tip. Here's a better rule. Be outrageously generous with your tips. Outrageously generous. Now, I don't even have a choice. I kind of don't like it when I get lousy service. get lousy service out of the kitchen, lousy service out of the waiter, waitress, whatever, the server, whatever it is. And sometimes that happens, but I'm my choice, my position, I'll end up on somebody's dadgum blog if I don't leave a tip. You know, I don't have a choice. I have to tip you anyway, regardless. But, you know, most of the time I don't run into that. And if I do, I'm not even in a position to gripe about it, because that'll be their Dave Ramsey story that he was in the restaurant griping, and I'm not going to be that guy. So I'll just grin and bear it and eat some food that's not really good and hot because you drug butt getting it out of the kitchen, you know, or whatever, and I'll leave you a tip anyway. But you know what? You're not in that position, most of you. And so leave a tip. Just, you know, be kind. And the other thing is I'm well aware that sometimes the kitchen screws up the deal and the server. But if the food's cold, that's not the kitchen's fault. That'd be the server left it on the window there. That's how it didn't get there. This isn't rocket science, people. So, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Leave a tip. Most of the time, somebody's in there working their butt off, taking care of you, and you need to leave a tip. Let me tell you where you don't leave a tip, and you should. When you stay in a hotel. You ought to leave a tip on the bed. You ought to leave some money laying there to say thank you for cleaning my room. That's just, well, I mean, here's an idea. What happens to you when you're more open-handed with money? When you're more generous in your giving and you're more generous in your tipping, what happens to you? You become more generous. You know what happens to generous people? Generous people smile more. Generous people are the ones that open a door. Generous people are kinder. They're generous in more than just their money. They're generous in how they handle situations. Generous people are more kind. You know, I catch myself when I'm being mean, it's usually when I haven't been generous lately. But I'm a little more compassionate when I'm generous. You are too. And here's the weird thing. The more generous you are, the more attractive you are. Generous people are attractive, not because you think they're going to give you money. That's not it. But they're just nicer people. You ever been around somebody that never gives anything and is selfish? Every time you see them coming, what do they want something. They're not bringing something to the party. They're taking something from the party. These are transactional people. You ever meet transactional people? Whether it's in business, whether it's at work, whether it's at church, whether it's just in your personal life, all they talk about is themselves and what they can get from the interaction. Those aren't generous people. I'll guarantee you people that are that selfish don't give. And I'll guarantee you people who give and who are generous in their tipping are the same people that are kind in conversation and let you actually have something. They ask about you and your kids. You ever have a 10-minute conversation with somebody and as you walk away you go, they learned zero about me and we learned everything about them. That's called self-stinking centered. Hello. That's not a generous person. That's a transactional person. It's a selfish person. They're shallow too. And guess what's weird? They don't get ahead. Generous people have a tendency to prosper. Why? Because they're attractive. Generous people have a tendency to get the promotion. They're attractive. No, jerks get the promotion. So you're one of those other people. When you say something like that, it reveals that you're not a generous person. You live in a world where the glass is half empty instead of a world of abundance. Generous people have a sense of abundance. They think there's enough for everybody and then some. And they're not scraping around trying to squeeze every dollar out of every deal. Now, it doesn't mean they don't negotiate tough, and it doesn't mean they won't ask for a bargain. That's not what I'm talking about. But there's a spirit about this, isn't there? The spirit of generosity. The spirit of generosity necessitates that you're less selfish. that you're more selfless. And when you give, it moves and reforms and crushes and reforms your heart into being less and less selfish. So the more you're giving, the more generous you become in every way, and the more attractive you become in every way. And the weird thing is that opportunities come your way. And that goes all the way back to, did you leave a tip? I left a penny just to prove to them I didn't forget them. That doesn't say anything about them. That says everything about you. Now, is tipping and giving the same thing? No, but it comes from the same place in your spirit, doesn't it? People growling and snatching and pulling and selfish, like a kindergartner saying, my toy, my toy, my money. Oh, brother. You miss the point of the whole money thing when you think like that.